In 2005, on the coast of South Korea, 120,000 people gathered. They watched gaming history unfold, the sheer production value which rivals modern-day esports as we know it, far before the huge tournaments put out by Riot, Valve, and even Blizzard themselves. But how did it get to this point? In this video, we'll cover how Starcraft was able to conquer South Korea. We'll answer questions like what was the most dominant run in Starcraft history? Why did a player earn the nickname God? And how did one sci-fi strategy game stand the test of time? To understand that, we must go back decades earlier. Low. Sent at 10:30 p.m. on October 29, 1969. The first message sent through ARPANET, the precursor to the internet. Originally intended to be logged in, the system crashed after the first two characters were transmitted. These two characters marked the beginning of the digital age. Soon, businesses adopted computers for accounting, inventory management, and data analysis. It became clear that computer literacy was essential to advance in the modern age, and South Korea took notice. By the 1980s, South Korea rebounded from the Korean War, thanks to rapid industrialization, an education boom, and a collective drive toward innovation. The Republic became a rising force, primed not only to compete globally, but also to lead in broadband and computers, showcasing the shift in focus from industrial technology to information technology. Such an undertaking was only possible thanks to a climate unique to the peninsula, a combination of government policies, strategic investments in infrastructure, and a focus on fostering a competitive telecommunications market. As a result, relatively cheap and high-speed internet became available. But there was one issue: not everyone could afford a computer. The infamous 1997 Asian financial crisis ravaged countries across East and Southeast Asia. South Korea was not immune to this recession, and in response, the government decided to increase their investment in the information technology sector, all in hopes of a digital path towards recovery. Aspiring entrepreneurs recognized this and pounced on the opportunity. With high rates of unemployment, those who were laid off turned to self-employment. An easy option was to open an internet cafe of their own, one of the few markets growing during the recession. One of the first, named simply Electronic Cafe, opened in 1998 near Hongik University in Seoul. They were originally used by university students and businessmen. In contrast, PC bongs also often served as a way for the unemployed to monitor the stock market, with the occasional video game cutting into their screen time. This dynamic was upended by the release of the 1998 classic, Starcraft. Starcraft's success was no accident. It was a culmination of government intervention, a youth culture hungry for identity, and an economic crisis that disrupted a nation. These three factors made South Korea the perfect breeding ground for the modern esports scene. The prevalence of broadband internet and the cheap cost of PC bongs made PC gaming attractive to the masses. This availability contrasts the high barrier of entry for Japanese video game consoles like the Sony PlayStation and Nintendo's SNES. Japanese media as a whole was frowned upon in South Korea, and was even seen as invasive for the Korean population, illustrated by the long-standing ban on Japanese cultural imports after World War II. As a result, South Koreans had no legal access to Japanese media at all until the 1990s. Japanese products and media, and by extension video game consoles, were difficult to acquire, and if someone did have one, it was a sign that they were extremely upper class. This lack of access, combined with the government subsidization of computers, made PC gaming far more appealing to the average Korean. Why spend nearly 400,000 won just for the console, and for 1,000 won per hour, less than $1, you can play on a high-end PC with fast internet? The sustainability of PC bongs offered entrepreneurs much needed stability and unemployed 20-somethings with cheap entertainment. And when you're young, have a little bit of extra cash and a bunch of time, a massively multiplayer game that plugs you into an entirely new digital landscape is pretty appealing. By 1999, something strange was happening in South Korea. Cafes were filling up not with businessmen or entrepreneurs, but with gamers locked in a digital war, trading the view of red and green candlesticks to one of space warfare. Players logged onto Battle.net, by far the best online gaming platform at the time, to face off against friends and strangers. Unlike its competitors, Battle.net was free, which streamlined the process of playing online. Factoring this with Starcraft's fast-paced matches and high skill ceiling made it the perfect game to be played in a PC bong. And truthfully, the perfect game for a culture like South Korea's. Pali, a term often used to describe the country's fast-paced, efficient nature, matches Starcraft's quick and intense games. Played whenever and wherever, a genre known for its reliance on speed and creativity fits right in. The game's near infinite skill ceiling meant there was always something to improve upon, one's micro, macro, and even the mental aspects of the game. Or should I say the game within the game. Before we dive into Starcraft's rapid growth, we must first understand how it plays. Starcraft is a real-time strategy game, RTS for short, a genre of video games in which a player is at war with an opponent, and through the accumulation of resources as well as construction and management of an army and infrastructure, the player must destroy that opponent. Because of the distinct lack of turns present in the cousin genre turn-based strategy, TBS, the games are all to varying degrees influenced by the speed at which the players operate. Or more simply, harvest, build, and destroy. Set in a fictitious future during the 25th century AD in a distant part of the Milky Way galaxy known as the Koprulu sector. The game revolves around three intelligent species fighting for dominance. The Terrans are humans exiled from Earth who are now skilled at adapting to any situation. The Zerg are a race of insectoid aliens in pursuit of genetic perfection and obsessed with assimilating other races. The Protoss are a humanoid species with advanced technology and psionic abilities who are attempting to preserve their civilization and strict philosophy about their way of life from the Zerg. Starcraft's gameplay can albeit near dastardly be simplified with two words: macro management and micromanagement. Macro refers to a player's ability to see and play the big picture. It means constructing buildings to advance your tech, making more workers to improve your economy, and managing your resources effectively. Macro also includes your overall strategy and the unit composition you choose to build, whereas micro refers to a player's ability to control their army, splitting clumps of marines to avoid disaster, using their spellcasters effectively, targeting specific units, or this beauty of a play from Bisu.
The hardest thing Protoss do in the early game like this.
Oh,
dude, he's just doing it. Look at this. Look at this.
Look at this micro.
Oh my God, he's so good.
Jeez.
I cannot emphasize how hard that is to do. And the problem is if you make one mistake and it connects on you.
Oh my God.
I cannot believe he's doing
this micro. This is so crazy what we're seeing here.
To be good at Starcraft, you had to be obsessed. But Starcraft was never supposed to be an esport. The game was far too simple and imbalanced. At first, winning was as easy as picking Zerg and spamming Mutalisks. Depth just wasn't there yet. This would change with the release of Brood War, a wholly new expansion pack featuring more campaign missions and 7 new units across the factions. New content and additional balance patches made the game 1. Difficult with a mechanical skill ceiling too high for a human to approach, and 2. Strategically deep with a metagame that continued evolving for years after the last released balance patch in 2001. These are generally the base requirements for a grassroots esport to be successful in the long term, says Motbob on the TL forums. And they were right. The foundation for a competitive scene was laid. Starcraft is infamous for its high APM. Players input hundreds of actions per minute, controlling their army, its development, its movement, and its ability to eliminate.
This could be a winning move right here. All the siege tanks being taken out, the Zerglings come out flanking, all of them, nothing gonna make it home.
Oh
Flash in so much trouble. The favorite of this tournament, drafting by far the most powerful team as far as 1v1s go,
also
is being dismantled by Sulky.
Putting himself into the last game.
Such skills were on constant display within PC bongs. Crowds formed around the best players. Onlookers saw firsthand the mechanical skill ceiling needed to match up with high-ranking players. This social aspect of LAN gaming only made Brood War more infectious. Consequently, owners of PC bongs took quick notice and began to set up local tournaments and even sponsored certain players. In addition to this grassroots scene, a breakthrough took place thanks to a little-known cartoon channel called Tooniverse. Sandwiched between kids' cartoons and dub shows from the West, a video game broke through. This was the first time Starcraft was broadcast to the Korean public, and soon games were broadcast regularly. Its popularity led to the creation of OnGameNet, a channel purely dedicated to Starcraft and gaming. The 1999 Tooniverse Pro Gamer Korea Open was recognized as the first OnGameNet Star League, better known as OSL. The OSL was an individual league run by the channel featuring some of the best Starcraft players fighting over a cash prize and bragging rights. One of the 16 players was Lee Ki-sok, who went by the name of Samjang. Lee was one of the first stars of Starcraft. In some ways, he was the first real icon of Starcraft, and even appeared in commercials. For this, as well as his gaming skills, he was even envied by Boxer, who saw him as a source of inspiration. However, his star status did not mean he was immune. Samjang went on to lose the upper bracket semi-final to the boy and was ultimately knocked out by Free Mora. As a result, the final was between the two, but there was one thing that made this matchup interesting. Both of these players swapped races at least once throughout the entire tournament. At this point, you might be asking yourself, why is this so significant? As I said, every single race has its playstyle, its own set of quirks, and certain strategies better suited depending on their matchup, be it against Terran, Zerg, Protoss, or a mirror matchup. And this is why players largely stick to one race throughout their careers. Build paths are memorized, unit pathfinding is ingrained, and the inherent strengths and weaknesses of units and strategies are understood almost like the backs of their hands. While many pros can claim mastery over their respective faction, only a few can say they successfully crossed the Royal Road. What is the Royal Road, you ask? It's when a rookie wins an OSL upon their first qualification. As of 2012, only 7 players have managed to do this, one of whom goes by the name of Boxer. Bongjwa, a player who dominates the Starcraft scene for a long period. A Bongjwa has a very high winning percentage in successive title wins. However, a Bongjwa is not defined by his statistics or records. Rather, a consensus is reached that he is the most dominant pro gamer of his era. Boxer would become the very first Bongjwa, but he didn't know it yet. Boxer is often compared to Michael Jordan in the world of Starcraft, but I'd like to offer up a new comparison. Lim Yo Hwan came into the Starcraft scene the way Magic Johnson did to the NBA, with great showmanship, flashy plays, and undeniable charisma. Both players wowed audiences with their playstyles. Magic had absurd passing abilities, whereas Boxer's dropship micro and the innovative strategies were second to none. Like Magic, Boxer was extremely marketable and helped spur the growth of their respective sports. The two broke new grounds in terms of compensation. Magic was the first to ever sign a 25-year contract, earning him $1 million per year, roughly how much the best players at the time were making. Boxer first signed with Cinnabro, a Korean management company, in 1999, officially making him a professional gamer. Now, Boxer's signing to Cinnabro was no accident. He was approached by the president, Kim Yang-jun, while playing at a PC bong. With Boxer's new backing, he was able to set his sights solely on becoming the best Starcraft player he could be. As a result, he chose not to go to college in pursuit of his gaming career. He went on to win his first tournament at the 1999 SBS Multi-Game Championship, marking the beginning of his legendary career. Around the same time, the South Korean government did something that no country had ever done before: start a government body dedicated to the management of esports. It was called the Korean Esports Association, or KESPA for short. Its official goal is to make esports an official sporting event and to solidify the commercial position of esports in all sectors. The organization manages the broadcasting of esports, the formation of new events, and the conditions in which pro gamers work, as well as encourage the playing of video games by the general population. KESPA's formation illustrates the changing sentiments around video games. The Royal Road a term given to rookies who win the OSL, was quickly traversed by Boxer with a shocking sweep in the grand finals against Jingle. His effortless 11-1 run earned him the title The Hope of Terran, a beacon of light in an era when Terran was seen as the weakest. 4 months later, in the 2001 Coca-Cola OSL, Boxer would again win the tournament with a 3-2 victory against Yellow. His dominance continued in the 2001 World Cyber Games, where his efforts led to a victory over Elki, earning him a gold medal in return. Boxer's play took him to the summit of professional Starcraft, where he placed second against Garamto. His reign continued when he won the 2002 KPGA First Tour, along with a second place finish in the 2002 Sky OSL. He followed this with another gold medal at the 2002 World Cyber Games. He was the first Bonjour, winning almost every tournament he entered between 2000 and 2002, and he gained the nickname The Emperor for his skillful command of the Terran race, a fitting promotion from the Hope of Terran. SK Telecom T1 is a name I'm sure many of you are familiar with, but you might be wondering what Faker's organization has to do with Boxer. It's quite simple actually. T1 is Boxer's team, or should I say was. In October 2002, Boxer founded Team Orion, which was established to compete in the 2003 Starcraft Pro League, the first event of the premier Boudoir Team League at the time. After winning the KTF Pro League, the team sponsor, Orion Group, did not re-sign anyone except for Boxer. He declined and in turn changed the team name to 4U. The team went on to win another pro league, the LG IBM MBC Team League. A mouthful if you ask me. Throughout all this, a telecommunications giant had kept a close eye, one by the name of SK Telecom. In April 2004, the team was acquired for $2 million, resulting in the birth of SK Telecom T1. In the following years, Boxer's play saw a decline. He still made it to the finals of a couple major tournaments before starting his mandatory military service, where he joined the ROK Air Force. In acknowledgement of his gaming career, the Air Force created an esports team of their own, known as the Air Force Challenge Esports, or ACE. Also, Boxer could continue to compete. Under ACE, Boxer finished second to Savior in the 2007 CJ Dream match. Following this performance, he was knocked out in the round of 32, failing to qualify for the elimination bracket. Boxer finished his military service in 2008 and returned to SK Telecom T1. However, his return made it clear that his Boudoir years were behind him. The pali-pali nature of Starcraft meant his play couldn't hold a candle to new up-and-coming players. One such player eclipsed his title of the Emperor in favor of something more simple. Players and fans called him God.
완벽합니다. 와, 이거 완전 이거
지금 이 단계에서는 지금 이 규모만
Flash's macro just absolutely crazy.
Lee Young-ho. Drafted at the age of 14, this boy was plucked from Daejeon and traveled to Seoul, sent to the KTF Magic Ends, the gaming subsidiary for South Korean telecom giant KT. Lee was exposed to Starcraft at a very young age, spending countless hours playing at PC bongs and theory crafting strategies to use in ladder games. Despite being a teenager, he climbed the ranks with ease, becoming one of the highest ranked Boudoir players in the process. His outstanding ladder play earned him a spot on KTF Magic and making his debut at the 2007 DOM OSL. At the age of 14, Lee Young-ho entered the ranks of South Korea's professional gamers, not as a teenager, but as Flash. After successfully making his way into the final 48, more commonly called round of 48, Lee found himself playing against a Protoss by the name of TT, marking Flash's first televised game in what would be the start of a long, beautiful career. Their match ended with Flash taking a 2-0 victory, where he advanced to the round of 24. Flash was lucky, or should I say unlucky enough, to be placed in Group B along with the Protoss known as Bisu. Bisu was fresh off a title run in the 2007 MSL, standing for MBC Game Star League, another popular pro circuit at the time. Surprisingly, Flash won against Bisu in these preliminary matches, but all was not lost for the Protoss. He made his way out of the losers bracket and advanced to the group stage along with Flash. The two were separated, Flash falling in with Group A and Bisu with Group B. Flash's opponents were almost impossible to surpass as a rookie pro, let alone a 14-year-old. He faced legends like Savior, I Love Uvi, and Light, the first two amongst the very few bestowed with the title of Bonjour. Savior was a Zerg considered the most dominant Brood War player in 2006, winning his 4th title a mere 2 months ago. While Boxer was known as the Emperor, Savior was known as the Maestro, due to his strategic creativity and his revolutionization of the ZVT matchup. I Love Uvi, like Flash, was a Terran player, but one big difference was that I Love Uvi was Boxer's protege. Uvi looked up to Boxer as a mentor in and outside of Starcraft. They played together under Boxer's Team Orion, 4U, and SK Telecom T1, but it all came to a head when the two met each other in the final, the 2004 Ever OSL Finals to be exact, where we saw two Terran Bonjois duke it out, resulting in one of the most bittersweet victories in gaming history. I Love Uvi went on to defeat his idol 3-2. Light, while not as prestigious as the previous two, was still a highly regarded player in his own right. The Dark Sorcerer, a nickname given to Light, albeit ironically, for his unparalleled multitasking. Many believed it was only possible thanks to dark magic. With this in mind, it was clear Flash's road to the quarterfinals was a rough one, but his play pushed him forward, defeating both Light and I Love Uvi while only losing to Savior, the reigning champ. Flash advanced to the quarterfinals where his opponent was Bisu. In a surprising turn of events, Flash bested Bisu 2-0, a shocking upset nobody foresaw. Flash pulled this off with some cheese, a strategy or tactic that relies entirely on surprise, niche, or matchup specific weaknesses involving timings, lack of specific units, and or defenses. This reliance is so heavy a player will ignore any economic progress in exchange for an attack. If the player fails to inflict crippling damage or win the game outright, they will be economically behind to a large degree. This title run was cut short when Flash found himself in the Final Four, an achievement in itself. In the semi-finals, Flash faced GG Play, a Zerg who went down 2-1 against the Terran hopeful. Despite this lead, Flash ultimately lost 2-3. As a result, GG Play advanced and went on to win the entire tournament. Even though Flash lost in the Final Four, his performance earned him the KESPA Rookie of the Year award. Things started to pick up in Flash's second year. He faced a world-renowned Protoss by the name of Stork, recognized for his macro play and redefining the Protoss versus Terran matchup. Flash already lost to Stork in the 2007 Dom OSL, defeated 3-0 for 3rd place. As you can imagine, there was already history between the two, and that wouldn't change with the Bacchus OSL in 2008. From January to March of 2008, the Bacchus OSL featured Brood War pros fighting for the lump sum of 74 million won. In the group stage, Flash was seeded against Stork, Rock, and Rumble. Stork played flawlessly, winning all 3 of the preliminary matches. However, the 3 other players left their fate to a tiebreaker. You see, Flash, Rock, and Rumble all finished with 1 win and 2 losses. To decide who advanced, a 1v1 tiebreaker match took place between all 3 players. Flash beat both of them and advanced to the elimination bracket. What awaited him there was a collection of some of the best Starcraft players of all time: Bisu, Stork, and Jaedong. The weight of the world was on Flash's shoulders. Flash's first matchup acted as a preview for his most famous rivalry. His opponent Lee Jaedong, better known as Jaedong, he was a top-ranked Zerg only lagging behind Savior. In his 2006 debut, he won the Rookie of the Year. In the latter half of 2007, he showcased his mastery of the Zerg versus Terran matchup with a 12-0 streak, featuring wins against players like Nada, could be argued as the GOAT of Brood War. To add insult to injury, Jaedong won 3-1 over Stork in the 2007 Ever OSL Finals. All this meant Flash was in trouble. The first game landed on Troy. In Game 1, Flash's Firebats made quick work of Jaedong's Zerglings. Zerg reinforcements melted wave after wave. Flash takes Game 1 with ease. Game 2 took place in Fantasy. Jaedong started the game off with a 9 pool. Simply put, he was aiming for early aggression. Flash was able to sniff this out and prepared accordingly. But the tides quickly changed in Jaedong's favor. He began to pump out Mutalisks and hit Flash's economy. From this moment on, Jaedong was behind the wheel. He attacked Flash's natural expansion with great success, all while expanding to a 4th base. Nevertheless, Flash continued to claw his way back into the game. He responded with some dropship harassment and attempted to return to the macro game, but it was too little, too late. The nail in the coffin was Jaedong's heat-seeking Scourge, an anti-air unit, taking out a large chunk of Flash's science vessels, a Terran support air unit, effectively sealing the game. Jaedong steals Game 2. Game 3 took place in Katrina. This game saw an overconfident Jaedong leading to an unlikely comeback by Flash. Even though Jaedong was ahead for the majority of the game, he had better harassment, more expansions, and more resources. None of this mattered because he lost in one fight. Jaedong's prioritization of Hydralisk cost him the game. In the final fight, they were wiped out by Flash's siege tanks in the blink of an eye. With this win, Flash advances to the semifinals to meet an old foe, Bisu. 1 down, 2 to go. Since their last meeting back in 2007, Bisu won at the IEF, the International Esports Festival, placed second at the 2007 GOM-TV MSL, and third at the Ever OSL in the same year. Safe to say he was at the top of his game. Game 1 took place in Troy, and it was not looking good for Flash. The map was classified as a reversed island map. A regular semi-island map is a map that starts off as an island, then becomes land by destroying neutral buildings. The reverse semi-island map does the opposite. The entrance to your main from your natural is partially blocked by 2 assimilators. The assimilators, however, are far enough from each other that even Ultralisks can pass through. However, if you break the assimilators, the path becomes more narrow and only ghosts can pass through. With this in mind, Flash planned to rush the Protoss main from the very beginning, sending over a handful of Marines and SCVs to build a bunker. However, it wasn't enough pressure because Bisu fended it off, only taking minor damage in return. Soon after, Bisu walked over to Flash with his army of Dragoons, making quick work of whatever was left. It was a convincing victory for Bisu. This was the only game Bisu won. Flash steamrolled the 3 other maps to a decisive 3-1 series victory. With Bisu down, the last one standing was Stork. Stork's journey to the grand finals was no different than Flash's. Both players lost a total of 2 matches throughout the bracket. Stork beat a fellow Protoss by the name of Best. Also, something I've noticed is that Korean players capitalize certain letters of their names. I just mentioned Best, but there's also Flash, Savior, and Boxer, and plenty more I'm forgetting. Anyways, in the semi-finals, Stork faced Luxury, a strong Zerg player only lagging behind Jaedong at the time. He too would only take 1 game off of Stork. With this series over, Stork found himself against the teenage phenom, Flash. One could see this as a revenge series for Flash because he lost 3-0 against Stork the year prior. This was for 3rd place and 8 million won. With his loss, Flash placed 4th, which still earned him 6 million won. Nothing to scoff at for a 14-year-old. With this in mind, Flash knew what had to be done. He had to kill a legend. For those who don't know, Stork was infamous for choking in the finals, and seemingly had a habit of facing up-and-coming phenoms, namely Bisu, Jaedong, and now Flash. The first set took place in Blue Storm. Stork's early aggression backfired and in turn faced a troubling response from the Terran, only made worse by Flash's micro making his units nearly unkillable, like covering his barracks over his army. Consequently, Stork let the Terran player do something he should never be allowed to do: out-expand him. Terran armies are so efficient at trading that having an economic advantage almost makes it impossible for the Protoss to contend. But that wasn't all. Flash's aggression never let up and always kept Stork preoccupied. Flash took Game 1 convincingly. Game 2 took place in Katrina, a Protoss favored map infamous for 2 base carrier builds. Stork followed this convention with an early expansion into his natural. However, just around the corner was a proxy barracks nearing completion. To clarify, a proxy is a production building built outside of a player's base, as close to the opponent as possible. This improves the sustainability and pressure of an attack by allowing reinforcements to arrive faster. Proxies are typically used in the early game as part of a rush. This play illustrated how well Flash knew the game. He knew Stork defaulted to 2 base carrier on the map, one of the most successful strategies on Katrina. Flash capitalized on Stork's greediness with early aggression. Quick Game 2 goes in favor of the Terran phenom. At match point, the 2 players found themselves in Troy. As a result, we see a lot of fighting around the assimilators, Flash protecting them so his siege tanks can pass through, and Stork looking to destroy them to prevent the tanks from passing. A war of attrition takes place here until Flash can break through with a small force. However, Stork squashes the push by focus firing the siege tank. He could have been more aggressive and push Flash's main base, and this would eventually cost him. In response, Flash's timing attack hit Stork where it hurts most, his economy. Stork lost countless probes in this encounter. At this point, Flash was nearing critical mass and was prepared to end the series as we know it. Flash's unstoppable macro and impeccable micro sealed the game.
오늘 경기의 포스만을 본다면 지난날 테란 본자였던 임요한, 최현우, 이은열 선수 못지않은 강력한 포스를 이영호 선수 오늘 보여주네요.
역사상 어떤 테란보다도 강력한 테란, 그리고 앞으로도 이렇게 강한 테란은 나오지 않을 것 같습니다.
네. 15세 9개월 10일 1992년 7월 5일생 이제 막 고등학교에
At the age of 15, Flash took down 3 of the most well-known Boudoir players of the era, and his entrance meant the beginning of a new one. Flash's amazing play in the 2008 Bacchus OSL was followed by a lengthy slump. Despite being one of the best Terrans mechanically, Flash experienced loss after loss in the individual leagues. In the following 22-month period from his title, which saw 8 OSL and MSL tournaments, the best result Flash could attain was a single semi-final appearance. Because of his poor play, Flash's strategies grew to be questioned, namely his love for the greedy 14cc opener and double armory builds against Protoss. However, this didn't stop Flash. If anything, it only fueled his drive. The start of the 2010 season showcased Flash's new approach. Flash started the year with a bang. In the first OSL of the season, Flash steamrolled the competition, making it to the quarterfinals with ease. Opposite him was none other than Jaedong. The general sentiment was Flash couldn't fight his growing reputation as a player who excelled at steamrolling the rank and file of Pro League, but unable to take on the Jaedongs and Bisus of the world. In spite of growing criticism, Flash displayed his rapid growth since his last title run. Jaedong fell 2-0, a clean series by the Terran. His mastery over the game only became more apparent after he dismantled Calm. Flash's timing attacks and excellent defense made quick work of the Zerg. Perfectly timed missile turrets deflected Calm's Mutalisk Harask with ease. Flash snatches the series 3-1, advancing to the finals in the process. Movie had the chance to do something very few players could even dream of: crossing the Royal Road, a feat where rookies win an OSL or MSL in their first qualification. The Protoss was no slouch, taking Game 1 to a whopping 30 minutes on Heartbreak Ridge, but Flash still came out on top. The map's name rang true. Movie suffered a crippling 3-1 series defeat to Flash. His only victory took place in Eye of the Storm when the series was at match point. Movie was able to answer Flash's harassment with mass stasis on his siege tanks, rendering them useless for the remainder of the skirmish. The back and forth culminated in a genius carrier transition from Movie, the perfect counter to a Terran mech army without any Goliaths. Even with this victory, it was only good to avoid a sweep. Game 4 on Fighting Spirit saw Flash punish Movie's greedy opener and finish off the Protoss with a good old-fashioned slow push. This OSL was so significant because it's almost been 2 whole years since his 2008 Bacchus OSL run. Flash's improvements were seen firsthand and earned him the title, but the same could not be said for the MSL in the coming weeks. The 2009 Nate MSL was a tournament riddled with controversy. As the little brother to the prestigious OSL, MSL tournament officials aimed to attract fans by normalizing the race distribution in the later stages and increasing the number of popular players in the final. This was met with criticism, as the dubious ranking systems that reworked the brackets was seen by some fans as a form of rigging the tournament to ensure that the bigger names would advance. Even with such a change, it did not guarantee the advancement of household names like Bisu or Savior, both of whom were knocked out in groups by Gumchi and Bogus. A notable series in the tournament was Flash's Terran versus Zero's Zerg. Flash is known for his mastery over the TVZ matchup, and Zero for the ZVT. Game 1 on Ultimatum saw a close macro game between the two, but as the game progressed, Flash's macro got the better of the Zerg.
That's good too. But yeah, those 2 bases going down for Zero was actually critical. Flash has been allowed to macro up and get his economy up way too long, and Zero just, despite having an early advantage, I feel, has let the game slip out of his hands. Going to go for a drop.
Zero's lack of harassment despite having the economic advantage cost him the game. Zero's sole victory took place in Match Point, a heavily Terran favored map. His Mutalisk bombing runs kept Flash's economy and army at bay, but the real game ender was the final fight. With Flash's ravaged forces left over, Zero went on a hunt. Beautiful Darksworn placements shielded his units from fire along with endless waves of reinforcements, all of which forced the Terminator Terran to surrender. The two had their final encounter on Odd Eye. Zero repeated the last game and went to early Mutalisks, hoping to pick off some SCVs as a reward. During this time, high-tech Zerg air units like the Guardian were popular on the map. Its long range makes it extremely effective in fending off groups of medics and marines. That is, if any anti-air units have yet to be made. Flash sniffed this out and acted accordingly, building 3 starports to amass a fleet of wraiths. Both players showcased phenomenal gameplay, but Flash's off-season practice came to light when he came out on top. Zero fell to Flash 2-1. Flash's last series was against Jaedong. Whenever the grand finals include Flash or Jaedong, let alone both, it's always going to be some of the best Starcraft to watch. But this series had an unfortunate mishap. Tied at 1-1, Game 3 took place in Odd Eye. Flash was pulling ahead when all of a sudden, the power went out. After some time and a handful of advertisements, a KESPA referee walked on stage and addressed the situation. I report the results of Game 3 involved in this incident. In consideration of the resources and expansions
that Jaedong appeared to be in the lead. What?
Oh my god.
Oh my god.
Oh my god.
No.
Oh my god. If this wasn't crazy enough, so am I reading
Due to technicalities, Jaedong was awarded the victory, putting the series at 2-1. The following game saw the end of the grand finals with the Zerg reigning supreme. At every turn, it felt like Jaedong perfectly countered Flash. Nonetheless, Flash's loss to Jaedong ignited a fire in him. 4 months later, Flash again found himself in the grand finals. Flash was one of the favorites after his victory at the recent 2009 Ever OSL and runner-up at the recent 2009 Nate MSL. Flash was flawless in the elimination bracket, beating Baby 2-0 and Pure 3-0. The only person stopping Flash from his third title was Effort, a Zerg player who surprised everybody. Like Flash, he was undefeated, but this didn't stop Flash from taking a commanding 2-0 lead. But what happened next was unexpected. Effort made an incredible comeback, winning 3 straight games to complete the upset and earning him his very first OSL title. Despite this, Flash ruined the 2010 Hana Day 2 Securities MSL. He only dropped 1 game after the tournament was reduced to the final 16 players, defeating Huason 2-0, MVP 3-1, and Freya with a 3-0 sweep. Sat across from him in the grand final was a familiar face. The rivalry between the two only became more mythical in their second series in the Star League finals. After falling to second place to both Jaedong and Effort, Flash came into the series with a fierce vengeance. Lee Young-ho was able to exercise his demons and swept his arch nemesis 3-0.
Are you guys... Isn't there a cup or something? Oh, there you go. Champagne or some such. Isn't there a cup or something? Some trophy he has to lift up also. I mean, sure, he's all wet now, but come on, guys. Yeah, Jaedong sitting there, his loss entirely. Flash going for a 14cc 3 times in a row. Proving to others and himself, I can do it, bitches. I can.
August came around and the World Cyber Games were starting to ramp up. Before WCG, there was WCG South Korea, a tournament that decided who advanced to the global stage. The top 3 players qualified for the global finals in Los Angeles, consisting of some of the best Rivalry players in South Korea and in turn, the world. But for these two, it seemed to be a foregone conclusion. Jaedong and Flash met in the finals once more. This time it was Jaedong who had blood on his hands. The Zerg defeated Flash 2-1, claiming the right to represent South Korea as their best player. The two finalists had to wait until September 30th, a whole month, to continue their WCG hopes in Los Angeles. On September 11th, 2010, a mere 3 weeks after the WCG South Korea qualifiers, Flash showed the world why he was called the Chosen One. The infamous Jaedong Flash rivalry persisted to great fanfare, but nobody expected Lee Young-ho to make history tonight. Up 2-1 against his rival, he was on the cusp of legendary status. A single victory away from joining NADA as the only players to have won both an MSL and an OSL at the same time. Before Flash, only 4 players managed to reach both OSL and MSL finals simultaneously: Reach, Muciojad, Savior, and Nada. In 2010, Flash did so 3 times in a row, meaning he competed in every single grand final that year. Fans witnessed one of the most dominant runs in esports history. By the end of the year, Flash grew his title collection from 1 to an eye-watering 5, joining the likes of Boxer, Nada, Savior, and I Love Uvi as one of the greatest Brood War players of all time. Flash's phenomenal 2010 sparked debate about his nicknames. Up to now, Flash was called Little Monster or Chosen One. While fitting before the run, they felt diminutive in the wake of his 6 consecutive finals appearances. As a result, Korean fans began calling him God Young Ho, or sometimes just God. Flash's career extends well past these moments. He transitioned to Starcraft 2, retired, and returned to play in the Brood War ASL, the Africa TV Star League, earning 2 titles in the process. I've even left out his Pro League play throughout his career where he was a monster in his own right, often carrying KT as their ace. Which reminds me, Flash also won first place at the World Cyber Games just a couple weeks after. These insane heights were almost unfathomable by Starcraft's developers. Starcraft was never meant to be like this at all. It was never supposed to be a full game. It was only supposed to be an expansion pack. Before Starcraft became a national obsession in Korea, it was almost a laughingstock at E3. Fresh off the blockbuster release of Warcraft 2, Blizzard Entertainment set its sights on the stars. Their next title, dubbed Orcs in Space, eventually became Starcraft, but only after a complete reinvention. Internally, the team saw it as a simple standalone expansion, Warcraft in Space, nothing more. The plan? Finish in 12 months. Their vision for Warcraft in Space was evident in StarCraft's use of the same engine and perspective, but with a drastic change in art style. Gone were the natural greens and browns of fantasy-fueled Warcraft. Instead, Blizzard opted for something more space-like, a horrific blend of putrid pinks, bright blues, and garish greens. It stood out for sure, but not in a good way. It wouldn't be long until Blizzard realized Starcraft wasn't garnering the attention they expected. At E3 1996, the game was revealed to the public to limited fanfare, only made worse by the announcement of another RTS, the Minion Storm. It was just down the hall from us, said Patrick Wyatt, one of the main programmers for Starcraft, and it had a full isometric perspective. It had a creature that looked like a Star Wars AT-AT walking around, and it just looked impressive in terms of the technology and the artwork, and made us feel embarrassed that we were even on the floor. With this, the team went back to the drawing board and redesigned the game from the ground up. Bob Fitch rewrote the entirety of the game engine in 1997. The Warcraft 2 engine just was not capable of producing the effects that we were looking for. All of the spell abilities such as the burrowing, the cloaking, and having interceptors on carriers couldn't be done. We just kept hitting all these walls because the engine wouldn't support these new ideas. Eventually, I said I've had enough. We can't do what you, the designers, want to do with the game engine the way it is. Give me 2 months. At the end of that time, we'll be able to do everything you're thinking of and 10 times more. That obsession with innovation of rewriting what wasn't working would mirror the very country that would later take this game to unprecedented heights. Come February 1997, Bob's work was finished and his claims were prophetic. Everything they wanted to do, they could finally do, plus a whole lot more. Starcraft's new and improved engine achieved the isometric and 3DS perspective Blizzard was looking for, but it came with its fair share of drawbacks. Designing the artwork, AI, and pathfinding proved difficult to the scaffolding of isometric elements on top of a 2D engine. Consequently, it gave way to Starcraft's now iconic quirky pathfinding. Starcraft was initially slated to be released in December of 1996. However, it finally came out on March 31st, 1998. Little did they know their game birthed a whole new industry. It created legendary stars who were the face of esports, showed the world the beauty of competitive gaming. Its digital landscape altered the fabric of the physical, and this only makes me wonder, what's next for the series? Thanks for watching.